happy to say welcome back to the latest edition of Festival Focus. As ever, I'm Tom Lee, and the other man on the line is not, happily, he's David Mullins. Welcome, Mr. Mullins. Where are you? How are you?
I'm good, Tom. I was in Sandown at the weekend. I didn't make it to Fairyhouse. The weather was too bad. Felt a bit poorly. So, yeah, back and going now.
Well, hopefully you're in one piece. We need you in top shape because this is a bumper early December edition of Festival Focus. So let's jump straight in. A week ago, Punchestown Tuesday, Intranet, a horse you might have a handy perspective on. I quite like this visually. Bookies were throwing around a few quotes, something like 33-1 for the Supreme Novice, because not only did Intranet travel very nicely through the race, but had to be quite tough at the end, had to knuckle down and actually show a little bit. Stable debut for Willie Mullins, won a bumper in his French days. Could this lad potentially a little way down the line, 3 months away, be Cheltenham material or maybe Punchestown material?
Yeah, I seen him. He was good. I felt he was a little bit clumsy jumping, and I just think he could be better suited to maybe Fairyhouse on a bit of softer ground in at Easter time or something. I didn't really get the vibes of a Supreme Novice horse.
Interesting. What about, and harness that Punchestown energy on the same day, Sandor Clegane, a horse who got put in at 16-1 for the Albert Bartlett after cantering to a 12-length win. If you go back to last April, you might remember that this horse was a million miles behind Facile Vega in the Grade 1 bumper, but he knows how to jump. And as well as that, it's nice to see a popular guy like Paul Nolan potentially with another good one on his hands.
Yeah, Sandor Clegane was very good. He was impressive when he won his bumper, I think in Punchestown as well. He was very good the other day. It'd have to be very taken with him. He was obviously well fit and ready. Hopefully he can last the season. And it's sort of a horse like that the Albert Bartlett suits, that maybe was ready early in the season, went over the top and maybe gets freshened up. He looked very ready for November to be winning that well in a soft ground maiden hurdle around Punchestown. So he'd be well up in my regards for Albert Bartlett.
And I think it gives a lot of people pleasure as well to see a guy like down in Wexford, Paul Nolan, with handling another good horse. He's a very likeable character, P. Nolan.
Yeah, he had a great weekend this weekend. He won the maiden hurdle with Sandor Clegane and Jayu Mashan, a bit of horse called Viva De Vito of Willie Mullins in Fairyhouse. He was very taken. He must have taken a while to figure out what it was all about. But yeah, Paul, he often has a nice horse, and when their yard starts hitting form, you have to be on the right side of them.
Switch countries, come across the Irish Sea a day later to Haydock Park, Ballygrifincottage. Now, I know that you can be quite sceptical and dismissive about small field novices. This was only a 3-horse race, but let's not forget that he readily, Ballygrifincottage, put away horses rated 148 and 143, jumping. You couldn't find many faults. There was one little niggle at the 8th fence, but was that performance, Ballygrifincottage, maybe a marker for the Brown Advisory, for which he's 16-1, or the longer National Hunt Chase, where he's shorter? I think he's something like 10 or 12-1. Would he be good enough in your mind on that evidence, Ballygrifincottage, to maybe be heading 3 months' time to Cheltenham?
Yeah, I think so. Possibly the 4 mile or the 3-6. He looks like a big, honest, staying chaser and does what it says in the box. So yeah, he was impressive, and yeah, definitely have him on the short side for the 4 mile or the 3-6 for me. Interesting.
Now then, we're going to ramp it up at this point because Sandown on Friday. There've been a few since, but a horse called Henri II was Paul Nicholls' 73rd winner of the season. He had a cross the card 4-timer that Friday. And this lad, Henri II, I don't know what you think, David Mullins, but to my eyes, he looked the real deal, because this looked a warm Grade 2 on paper, but he stayed on very strongly up the rising ground, 4 1/4 lengths to the second horse. Off the back of that, 25s for the Ballymore, stable flying. Henri II looks potentially a good one.
No, not for me. Didn't like him.
You don't like, what can you possibly find to knock in that? Because in that race, for example, you had Maximilian coming down from the north of England for McCain and Hughes. You had a couple other very talented looking horses, and yet he put them to the sword and left them standing. Where are the faults in there?
I wasn't visually taken by him. I thought they came up the straight fairly slow for 2 mile 3. Maybe he's a 3 miler. Maybe he might go for an Albert Bartlett. I cannot see this horse winning a Ballymore or Supreme Novices anyway, that's for sure. And yeah, Don McCain and Paul Nicholls. No, I'd rather see something come from the Henry de Bromhead, Willie Mullins, Nicky Henderson stable, I'm afraid, for the novice hurdles in Cheltenham.
Well, all right, let's go from novice hurdles to potentially novice chasing glory. Jonbon, Sandown, Saturday. Let me ask you this as a sort of a about face type of a question. How good must Constitution Hill be to leave this lad, Jonbon, looking like a statue, given that he's now perfect 2 from 2 over fences? They're tricky fences at Sandown, and yet he left them behind. The bookies would have you believe the Arkle is his for the taking, Jonbon. He's only 7-4, but surely even you, and some people watching this will say, David Mullins, Irish bias, never gives the English horses any credit. Well, what about Jonbon?
Oh, he was very good. I was standing in the stands looking, and Aidan Coleman shook him up about 10 strides from the last, and he went down and pinged it, and he made about 3 lengths in the air and just went to the line straight as a die and kept getting further and further away. I'd say he's improving the whole time, this horse. It's going to take a fair one to pass him in Cheltenham.
Going to take a fair one to pass him in Cheltenham. He's 7-4 for the Arkle. Now I'm going to say, I know you were in Sandown, but I guarantee you will have found a screen to watch Facile Vega the same day at home at Fairyhouse, because if Jonbon's 7-4, Facile Vega now 5-4 for the Supreme Novice, prompting your uncle, Tony Mullins, to put on Twitter that Facile Vega is, and these are his words, not mine, potentially the best racehorse I've ever seen. He's a dual grade 1 bumper winner, and he did this in a canter. I know he was 1-9 and probably not beating very much, but the visual angle, bookies say 5-4. Is it as simple as that? Is this guy the second coming, Facile Vega?
Tony, I don't know why bother say potentially. Just get off the fence and say it if you think it. But he won a maiden hurdle at 1-9. Great. We all knew he was going to bolt up, but he did it. He did it very well. It's just you're backing him at 5-4 to get to Cheltenham. Really, I think I can't see anything getting by him. Potentially the best racehorse we've ever seen. We won a maiden hurdle. Relax. Well, Constitution Hill, Facile Vega, all this talk. We'll see you in March.
Well, from one Mullins to another, David, I've asked you about Tony and his Twitter account. What about Emmett Mullins, a trainer I really admire, because it feels as if this fella can just train absolutely anything and conjure a miracle. Go back to April, Noble Yeats, winner of a national at 50-1. But loads of old plodders can win a national at 50-1. They don't then, within 8 months, suddenly metamorphose into genuine Gold Cup material. But if you seed away this Noble Yeats quickened up to put the Many Clouds chase to bed at Aintree, I don't think personally it's an exaggeration that the bookmakers would be throwing 10-12-1 quotes around for the Gold Cup. Some people call Emmett Mullins a genius. 2 questions to you, please, David. First of all, is that a realistic level to pitch in Noble Yeats, 10 or 12-1 for a Gold Cup? And secondly, Emmett Mullins, there is a touch of something very special about that fella.
Yeah, I think it's a realistic quote for Noble Yeats. He's it's probably, if you look at it, it's probably the right way to go about training a racehorse, is go for the handicap and get your experience, which the national is, and try and progress from there. The national seems to be Gold Cup horses coming back the way for the Grand National after running 2 or 3 years in a row in a Gold Cup or something. So now it's good to see it happening the other way. Hedge Hunter, Willie done it that way. I'm sure Emmett's learning plenty from that. He said it in a couple of interviews that he grew up watching Hedge Hunter, and I think he was definitely second in a Gold Cup. He could have been placed another time as well. So the way Willie has done it, he's not going around Close Sutton with his eyes shut anyway. That's great to see.
Well, it's the truth. I mean, you think recently he's had winners in Britain at Doncaster, at Wincanton. He had Merlin Giant and Fairyhouse on Sunday. He's some trainer and he can get them ready. Noble Yeats, I for one will be delighted to see him take his place at Cheltenham in March. Sandown Park, you were there. We've established that one. We've talked about Jonbon. Tell me now, David Mullins, about Edwardstone. The Arkle winner belongs at the top table now against the senior horses, judging very much on why he and how he went about his business in the Tingle Creek, no less. Is this lad the biggest threat to Energumene? Is he good enough to even turn up at Cheltenham in March and topple Energumene?
I think he could be, Tom. I've never actually laid eyes on him until Saturday. I couldn't get over the strength of this horse. It's like watching a sprinter nearly going around the parade ring. I'd say he'll improve for that again, which could be a bit mad after winning at Tingle Creek. He looked it. I think he will give Energumene plenty to think about. Yes, definitely.
Yeah, he's very likeable, isn't he? Transfer your thoughts to Fairyhouse on Sunday. No shortage of talking points. We'll be as concise as we can. But in the big one, the Hatton's Grace, we were expecting the headlines to be a fourth Hatton's Grace for the mighty mare Honeysuckle, 17 wins. That wasn't the case. And I suppose one day it was always going to happen. She was going to be shot down eventually. But off the back of that, is it knee-jerk or is it natural that she's now 8-1 for a third champion hurdle? Is that dismissive or is that about right? 8-1 Honeysuckle for another champion hurdle.
I think I might be taking a bit of 8-1 on that. It has to be. It can't be that way. She beat Ronald Pump a half a length one year in a Hatton's Grace. I think that's not far off. She's run the Hatton's Grace 4 times. I think that could be one of her best runs in a Hatton's Grace. Tia Hoopo and Classical Dream. Classical Dream's a very highly rated horse, and he rode the race off of Honeysuckle, and Jack Kennedy rode the race off of Paul Townend, and that's the way it kind of ended up. But I thought it was a massive run out of Honeysuckle. I don't think we see her at her best at the Hatton's Grace. We see it in Leopardstown and we see it in Cheltenham, and possibly we don't see it in Punchestown either. So I think they're the 2 days that matter for her. And I think I don't know. I wouldn't like to be having Honeysuckle as an underdog if I was Nicky Henderson anyway.
That is a genuinely fascinating answer, because 8-1 Honeysuckle, dismissed by some people, embraced by David Mullins. And if that's the case, what about the horses that beat her? You mentioned Classical Dream, but the winner, the 20-1 shock winner of the Hatton's Grace, was a horse who's still only a baby, really. He's in short trousers. He's 5 years of age right now. He's 7 from 10 over hurdles. That's Teahupoo, who, in my notes, as I was preparing to talk to you, I said, is he the value play for the champion hurdle at 20-1? Until, of course, on Monday of this week, Gordon Elliott, who had a 4-timer at Fairyhouse on Sunday, throws a spanner in the works and throws into the equation not the 2-mile champion hurdle, but the 3-mile stayers hurdle. What a combination that could be. Teahupoo with speed, if he's got the stamina, what a threat he could be in an open-looking division. Teahupoo, what do we think of him, and where would you go with him?
I thought Teahupoo was very impressive in Gorn last year, and I actually really thought he was the value in the champion hurdle. He ran no race. Obviously couldn't have been his true showings, as we can see now. I don't know. He was a young horse last year. He's 5 turning 6 now. Is he not going to get quicker, is he? He's probably going to want the trip. So, it's probably the right call out of Gordon if that's the route to go down.
Well, he's something like 12-1 for a stayers hurdle. You won't get 12-1 for the Turner Novices Chase about another Elliott star who won on Sunday at Grade 1 level. That's the Drinmore winner, Mighty Potter. A Grade 1 double for Gordon Elliott, Teahupoo and Mighty Potter. This lad is deeply impressive. I know sometimes you pull a bit of a face and say, show me a bit more evidence, but he stormed clear in the Drinmore. The bookies had to take the knife out and cut his price for the Turner after that. what is there to dislike about Mighty Potter?
Nothing to dislike. For me, he was the horse of the weekend. He just looked a monster. He looked to dwarf big novice chasers behind him. Galliard Manila is not a small horse. The size of this horse, he looked like he's really strengthened into himself. I haven't seen him in the flesh yet this season, but even looking at him last year, he looked like a big, weak horse. And to go and win 2 Grade 1s last year, he had to be a serious monster this year if he strengthened up. It looks like he has, and I think that win in the Drinmore is a lot more impressive than it looked. He nearly fell over at the back of 2 fences astride after. Hopefully he'll be after picking his feet up a bit quicker for the next day. But God, this looks a Gold Cup horse as a novice.
There's a lot in what you're saying here, because your comments, particularly I think about Honeysuckle, about Tearpoo for the stayers, about Mighty Potter, his physique, and Edwardstone are instructive. I'm going to ask you as a closing question your performance of the week of all the names we've picked through, but that will be the final question. The penultimate one is the Royal Bond winner, Marine Nationale for Barry Connell. This race, the Royal Bond, had been his target, and it's one that they hit with accuracy. You think how he was running on at the end to nail the leader in the final strides. Unbeaten, improving, therefore 10-1 for the Supreme Novice. How does that rate in your estimation, Marine Nationale?
It's probably about right, 10-1 for the Supreme Novice. He was impressive, but I was so impressed with the ride. Mikey O'Sullivan gave him 22 years of age. I think he's professional about 2 months. To show the courage to stay in behind and not force your way out and try and get out around and lose a load of ground. I thought it was a brilliant ride. I know the ground didn't really suit him. They had to worry about it, and I think he will improve for nicer ground again. So 10-1 seems about right, but I think the ride got him away on the ground at the weekend.
Good stuff. No shortage of candidates this week in what I said. I did warn you it was a bumper edition, and I hope we've delivered exactly that. Now, names in the frame like Jonbon, Facile Vega, Noble Yeats, Edwardstone, Honeysuckle, Tearpoo, Mighty Potter, Marine Nationale. Of all of those, throw them into the pot, boil it down and condense it to one most eye-catching, likeable performance. If you could only bottle one of them, who would it be and why?
I got the best feeling, or the best feeling looking at a horse with Mighty Potter. I think his untapped potential so far is, I think that's the one looking forward to seeing the next day the most anyway.
Mighty Potter, the winner of the Grade 1 Drinmore Novices Chase at Fairyhouse on Sunday. Folks, that is all once again for this week. Festival Focus will be back as ever at the beginning of next week. If only we knew now what we will know then. We'll be back in the same place. Thanks for being with us. Thanks to David. Festival Focus, over and out.